Hello, gentlemen. Just to introduce myself, my name is Dave Trumbore from Collider.com. I'm the senior editor for streaming coverage as well as an animation lead. And this interview will not only be for our readers on the site itself, but we'll also be using it for our animation-focused podcast called Saturday Mourning Cartoons. So, with that in mind, to start off, would you both mind introducing yourselves by name with your title for Castlevania for our listeners out there?
My name's Warren Ellis. I'm a creator, writer, and executive producer of Castlevania on Netflix.
And my name's Kevin Kolde, and I'm executive producer of Castlevania for Netflix.
Kevin, I had the chance to chat with you years back now about Castlevania in 2017 at Rooster Teeth's Animation Fest. And that was before the show had even premiered, but I know the two of you have been working on this in one form or another since at least 2007. So what's it been like to finally see your hard work come to fruition?
It's been amazing, to be honest. It was a long road to get where we got, but, in hindsight, I think that it was probably, the right time, the right place, the right group of people for it all to come together in the way that it did. And I couldn't be happier. I've been, privileged to work with, just amazing, talented artists at, all levels of this production, from Warren to Sam Dietz and Adam Dietz, directors at Powerhouse. They're incredibly talented team of artists, amazing cast of actors that we've been able to pull together for this. Meredith Lane, who does our casting and voice direction, Trevor Morris, our composer. It's just, I couldn't be happier. It's great.
And then Warren, same question for you, since you've been, working on adapting this for the last 10 years or so.
10 years and then some. I think it was probably around '06 when Kevin first talked to me about Castlevania, and then that ran into trouble, as most of these things do. The stuff you see actually being produced and made is the very tip of the iceberg of what was always in development at any one time. So it went away, and then fully 10 years later, Kevin came back to me and said, "How about Castlevania?" And I said, "Who are you and what are you doing in my house?" It had been kind of a long time. But, I guess sometimes if you wait long enough, the stars will align and you'll get to do it after all.
Well, I know fans have been waiting for an adaptation that lives up to the quality of the video games and beyond. You guys are giving us a ton more story than we ever got with any of the games themselves. But speaking of that, I believe you previously stated that the end of Season 2, I think that was the end of your original script, originally envisioned as a trilogy, but that was the end of that, right? So Season 3 was kind of a new blank page for you guys?
That's correct. Season 2 was the end of my original plan. I had the situation, which was happy and delightful and pleasing, that Netflix came to us and said, "We would like Season 3, please." And then the delight and joy and pleasure fades, and you have what we call in the writing game the "oh shit" moment when you realise you don't actually have a clue what to do next. Luckily, we had a broadcast of actors who had given me just so much in terms of invention and nuance during Season 2. And of course, many of those characters I'd left in play. So I discovered that I could give each of those characters a new full life, a new character arc, and they essentially told their own story in Season 3.
And I definitely want to get to some of the continuing arcs and some of the new arcs that are introduced in Season 3. But I saw on Twitter, you mentioned a little while back, that when you started working on Season 3 in 2018, you started out with a quote, "the psychedelic horror season." So how did that one line kind of pave the way for everything else that was to come in Season 3?
As I'm sure everyone knows by now, I never played the games. I wasn't even aware of them until Kevin originally came to me about them. So all my knowledge of the games is from Wikipedia and fan pages. So I find myself just sort of clicking through the canon in those situations, looking for things to hold on to. And there's some really weird stuff in the canon. And occasionally you just trip over one or two things, and, spoilers being what they are, I can't mention right now what those one or two things are, but you'll see that you trip over that, and it kind of gives you a key to unlock the entire story, and it's fully psychedelic horror. It's weird stuff. So that ended up colouring the entire season. It gave me permission to get really much stranger than I probably should have.
Well, I definitely love the lengths that you guys went to. I was wondering in, season 2, there's that fantastic kind of fight to end episode 9, and that leads into everything to come. But I was wondering, how are they going to top that? Well, this episode 9 with the infinite corridor and the dream sequences and all the stuff that led up to that was absolutely phenomenal, and I could geek out on that probably for at least an hour. But in the interest of time,
oh shit! Have you seen it?
Oh yeah. I've watched the whole season. Absolutely.
I was going to say, the hell did you get the infinite corridor from? I didn't realise they'd released assets to you.
That'd be pretty good if I figured that out from the no scraps of information that you guys let out. So
it would, right?
Yeah. Amazing detective work.
I should have kept you believing I was some sort of mystic or mind reader.
I know. I only got about 5 hours sleep, so you absolutely would have thought me at this point. My brain is mush.
Oh,
let's carry on.
Sure.
This is going to go great on a podcast. Jesus.
Well, that's the magic of editing, too. What I loved about Season 3, though, you guys get to follow 4 different kind of story arcs. So they focus on different characters. Obviously, you have Alucard's story, and you've got another that focuses on Trevor, Sypha, and a newcomer, Saint Germain. We also get a side story with Carmilla and her vampire queen sisters. And then we also have Isaac's own journey. But for the both of you, did you have a favorite character arc to kind of play around in, or is there one that stood out to you this season?
Well, that's really hard, because one of the amazing things that, I love about the show and what Warren's been able to bring to it is I love, all the characters. I just do. They're all interesting in their own ways, right? So it's really hard to pick. I guess maybe in some way Isaac's journey is, to me is very interesting because, of sort of where he's started out, in season 2 and kind of where he's heading, in season 3. He's evolving to become a different character, a different person, and I think people are going to be a bit surprised by his journey, but I love them all. I really do. Lenore and Hector, makes me squeal with joy. It's all yeah.
I don't ever want to hear you squeal. I really don't.
Yeah. Can we edit that out, Dave?
Sure.
Can we take that part?
I mean, unless you want to squeal with joy, and then we'll keep it in the podcast. Up to you.
I'd have to work it up, but yeah.
And then a follow-up question for you then, too. Maybe a harder one, actually. Do you have a favorite character that you got to write for, either past or present? Because personally, I loved and I miss Godbrand. It just seemed like such a fun character to get to play with. So any of those that kind of stand out for you, even if they're supporting characters?
Oh, I tell you, if Peter Stormare hadn't taken that gig, I would have been so screwed because his voice was all I could hear. And I mean, you've heard the performance. I'm not even sure he knew the microphone was on. It was just so instinctively insane. Godbrand was a lot of fun. I enjoy writing Isaac because it's actually very difficult to write Isaac. It's a real challenge. He comes from a very different place, and he has a very particular cadence, which Ade has developed over the show, so I find myself actually starting to write to his cadence. Carmilla is always a joy. And in season 3, Saint Germain was just immense fun to write, because he's so grandiose. and he's so unimpressed with literally anybody else he meets. And yet he cannot help but try to play, work, and con everyone he meets. So that was just immensely entertaining.
I believe you said you wrote that character with Bill Nighy's voice and cadence and performance kind of in mind. So how great was it that you guys got him? Yeah.
Yeah. Once again, I would have been in real trouble if Bill hadn't done it because it was very much the sound of Bill Nighy. I demand. I mean, I've been a fan of that guy's work for, decades.
Same.
And it was marvelous working with him.
Were there any actors who you, this is a question for either of you, any actors who you had in mind that you reached out to that maybe you didn't think you would ever in a million years get them to sign on, or maybe that some that just didn't work out?
All of them.
Pretty much. I mean, look at the cast.
Yeah.
We've got aside from our returning actors, and I'm amazed even that our previous actors decided to return after the horrible things I make them say. But I mean, Bill Nighy, Barbara Steele, for God's sake, Lance Reddick, Jason Isaacs, Jessica Brown Finlay, Ivana Milosevic, Yasmin Al-Masri, and Nevin. No, I mean, I'm always shocked when these people agree to come onto my weird animated show about vampires and swearing.
Did the returning, I don't know how much the cast really ever gets to cross over, but did the returning cast have any kind of like welcoming or even hazing for the newcomers to be like, you don't know what you're getting into, but it's going to be a hell of a ride?
Animation recording is a bit strange.
Yeah.
Oftentimes the actors are not in the same room, and oftentimes they're not even, recorded at the same time.
Right.
So there's not a lot of that interaction that we would know of. We're fortunate at times to get them all together, sometimes across continents, which is always great. To have them be able to perform together, and there was
we had the ladies from Syria, from Styria, all in the same room.
Oh, cool.
At least once, and that was hugely entertaining. We connected up. We had Alejandra in LA, Bill was in London, and Richard, I want to say, was Berlin, and I think we were running them simultaneously.
Hopefully you can get them together for a Comic-Con. Yeah.
We got Richard and James and Alejandra together in the studio once for season 2, which was great. But other than that, it's always like through the amazing technology of the future that they're all in these different places and time zones, and somehow they can hear each other and we can hear them all, and it all comes together.
Exactly. And speaking of amazing technology and some time-traveling future folk, we get Saint Germain as a new character in this one, but we also have some teases of some other characters who may have fans kind of questioning, digging into the lore a little bit more. Warren, you've previously said of the Castlevania character of Grant, and honestly, I don't even know how to say his last name. Is it just Dynasty or is it Dynasty? Because the way it's spelled is ridiculous.
The way it's spelled is ridiculous, and it has to be pronounced as Dynasty, isn't it? Dynasty. If you go back, there's actually a town in the Romanian region called Danasti, Danasti, and I think it's just a transliteration issue, but it just comes out as Grand Dynasty.
But you previously said of this character, what use as a pirate in a landlocked country anyway? But in season 3, we get some teases of both a character they call the Pirate of the Roads, I believe, and it also features an unnamed sailor who simply goes by the Captain. So are we reading too much into maybe some Grant lore in there?
You're reading too much into the Captain, The captain is simply the captain, I'm afraid.
Okay. No, I love it because I love Lance Reddick. Yeah.
But however, the pirate of the roads who stuck wheels on his boat because he's a pirate in a landlocked country.
Right.
Yes, that's my little nod to all the people still furious that we didn't use all the two-dimensional sprites from the early games.
Fantastic. Speaking of mysterious characters, I profess to not know all the lore of Castlevania as well, but we get introduced to a very mysterious, magically gifted woman by the name of Miranda. So can you maybe tease a little bit more about how that character came about and maybe what she was based on?
Oh, not everybody. Not everybody is from the lore.
Right.
Some of them I just made up, I'm afraid.
Well, I definitely like her part to play in the story. With characters like the Captain, with characters like Miranda, I want to personally see more of them. So I'm glad that this world, your world, is expanding and including more and more of these stories beyond the main.
I dream of writing those characters more as well. But that's for me. I mean, when Kevin talks about Isaac's particular arc being his favourite, although it was possibly the hardest part of the season to write for me, it was also among the more interesting arcs because almost uniquely amongst those characters, Isaac is on a philosophical journey.
Yes.
And, in the period, philosophy included magic. So I can have him having conversations with old sea captains and hermit magicians.
I love it. And that leads right into my next question, actually, because when I think of Castlevania, this particular series, I think of three things. There's gorgeous animation, there's incredible and intense action, but also a rarity in animation these days. We get deep philosophical conversations that are, held by complex characters. So when it comes to philosophizing, when do you know, when you've got your message across, and when do you know when you have to kind of rein it in and move on to the next thing?
Well, that's relatively easy for me because I'm quite stupid. I'm not really going to get that deeply into it. And the thing to bear in mind is that these aren't lectures. These are people talking and trying to get something from each other,
right,
or trying to give something to each other. So if you maintain the personal conversational connection, all conversations have an arc and a conclusion. It's not difficult to know when you've outstayed your welcome.
So essentially you use story structure just kind of in the focused form of a conversation.
Essentially, yeah.
Gotcha. As for the other components of Castlevania, the insane action sequences, I'm curious how much of that is actually scripted by you guys, and then how much do you just lean on storyboard artists and animators to really flesh that out?
Depends massively. Some scenes I've scripted down to the beat. Some scenes I've literally set it up. I've noted where the scene needs to end, and I've literally written on the script, Sam, this needs to be about 1 minute, 30 seconds long, go nuts. And Sam and his team just take the space and invent something marvellous. I mean, I can't say enough good things about Sam Dees, their director, Adam, the co-director and assistant director, and Sam's entire staff at Powerhouse. They're just astonishing artists.
Yeah, they're fantastic. Were there any specific either action scenes or fight scenes that you said some of them are scripted by the beat. So which ones were really important to you, if you can remember, that they were hitting these specific ones? Yeah.
Yeah. Season 1 in the underground with the Minotaur thing and Cypher as a statue. That was scripted down to the beat. It was one of the first revelations for me. Obviously, working in comics, I script things as closely as the artist needs me to.
Right.
But to see that kind of close scripting translated into animation and seeing what they could actually make out of that was really revelatory for me. Not least because it started to teach me when I would be overwriting and when I can just step back and let Sam invent and create.
I guess a similar question then goes into when you were crafting the idea of how to explore the infinite corridor and what that looks like, and how you get this idea of, infinite dimensions and portals and doorways, how you bring that across in animation. What was that process like? And then what was your reaction to seeing the finished product?
Oh, I made everyone's life hell on that one.
Yeah, it looked insane.
I knew exactly what that looked like, and I knew it was going to drive everybody crazy. Yeah. So that went through a whole bunch of iterations, but I could see it down to the color palette, and just seeing them build that stage by stage was marvelous. Once again, I know I put them through hell, but what they brought back was just 100 times better than what I was seeing in my head.
I think the whole Infinite Corridor, the animation, all that stuff, that was fell on Adam Dietz to make all of that come together, and he really did an amazing job. Also, Adam and his team, coming out of the Infinite Corridor into the shots of hell. Since you've seen it in the latter episodes, like, again, making something out of nothing and figuring all that out. And, we gave him lots of reference from 2001 to,
oh God, I was even pulling out old psychedelic band posters from the Fillmore in the 60s for that one.
I love that. I'm curious, what were your inspirations that kind of went into it? Because there's a bunch of sci-fi stuff that goes in there. It goes well beyond, the traditional fantasy art because you're peeking into all these different worlds. So what were some of the other things you guys threw around as inspiration?
Oh, God, what even was there? I mean, I pulled out the old psychedelic posters for Adam because of the color scheme.
Yeah.
I think a lot of it was, I had a list of things I wanted to try, and I think I just boiled them down to 5 images I thought would be the most striking. I just wanted them. I remember wanting the things we used to be the most un-Castlevania things we'd yet seen. I wanted them to be completely jarring against the world we knew.
Well,
that was the leading impulse for all of those.
Yeah, that definitely worked, because that was a sequence I had to go back and watch kind of again and again, because I was just I felt like Saint Germain at that point, where I was just like slack-jawed and stunned by everything, and I had to look at every frame and see what, this bipedal robot walker storming at me, and just trying to make sense of all of it and kind of take it all in. Yeah, there's just hats off to the team, because that was just a fantastic standout sequence. Just wanted to mention that. Before I run out of time with you guys, and I got a million questions I could talk about, but at the end of this thing, at the end of season 3, we haven't really even talked about Alucard, but he's got kind of this, he's gone through a pretty heartbreaking betrayal, and he's starting to sort of slip back into his father's madness. We see our main heroes in Sypha and Trevor kind of dealing with some things as well. Hector, arguably, is in a worse spot now than he was back at the end of season 2. Isaac is maybe the best of all of them, because he's kind of got an army of the dead that he's leaving. But what can you guys tease about where you'd at least like to see the story go from here? I know you can't get into specifics or renewals or any of that, but what can you tease about what could be more fleshed out in the future?
Kevin, where can we go with this?
I'm not sure where we can go. To be honest with you, in terms of our answer, right? I think that there's at the end of season 3, comes at a very different place than you think it's going to be.
Right.
Season 3 sort of starts with, new hope, new beginning, and you think everything's going to be great and happy, and then Warren pulls the rug out from under you and goes to shit. So look, there's definitely unfinished business and unfinished stories that I think we could easily. Journey is clearly the story.
Yeah. What I will say is that in some ways you can almost look at Castlevania as an alternative history story, where vampires are real and magic is real. And the 3rd season is the aftermath of what everyone thought was the worst possible thing that could happen. Dracula is real and he's trying to kill everybody on the planet, and that gets stopped. But all these other elements have been thrown into play inside what has become a power vacuum So you're living in a world where these things are real, and it turned out just knocking out the middle of that great threat left a hole that all these terrible things we now know about are now going to rush in to fill. Therefore, this is a much grimmer world even than the actual time period in the late 1400s or wherever it was.
Yeah.
So, it doesn't necessarily end happily, but it feels kind of truthful to the situation that was instigated at the top of season one. These things have happened in the world. They don't go away. There is no reset. It's not like everyone is going to forget about vampires, night creatures, and magic. And these things are now off the leash and reveling to some extent in the chaos.
That's a great tease and setup for, hopefully, future stories to come, but I'll let you off the hook. My last question for you guys today. What else maybe are you two currently working on that you can talk about? Like Warren, I just saw the Crunchyroll news for Freak Angels, the adaptation there. So anything else going on that you guys are proud of or like to do a signal boost for?
Kevin and I, this was announced a month ago, but Kevin and I are working on an animated series called Heaven's Forest, also at Netflix, which is a weird kind of cultural remix on the Ramayana in India.
Right.
And we're working with Netflix India and Indian consultants. And I'm still writing that, and I can't say too much more than that right now. But that is American.
Fantastic. And Kevin, anything else going on for you aside from Heaven's Forest?
No, Heaven's Forest is the main one that we're working on now. We just, on the projects now with Warren, we just wrapped up finally the new season of Being Copycat, which I think people will be super stoked for. So that should be coming out soon. But yeah, Castlevania, Heaven's Forest.
Being Copycat.
Being Copycat.
Sorry. I remember. Is that Natasha Allegri?
It is indeed.
Mm-hmm.
I remember first seeing her stuff. She used to draw little comics that she'd post on Live Journal in the early 2000s.
Yeah.
I followed her way back when, and it's just delightful to see her creating animated shows now. I love her.
Great. She went and lived in Japan for basically 2 years and worked with a Japanese studio to put it all together because it's got a lot of anime influences. So, I think people will be stoked to see it. And so, that's what's going on.
Cool. So if you guys want to announce that she's also animating and directing your chibi-inspired version of the Castlevania universe, feel free to do that on this show. But otherwise, thank you guys so much.
I will reveal that on my desk are some sketches that she did of Castlevania babies.
Oh, that is too cute.
Someday.
That is too cute.
Someday.
Well, I will happily crowdfund that or contribute to it at least. So whatever it takes.
Yeah.
Thank you guys so much for your time today, and congratulations on all things Castlevania. Looking forward to more from that show and your projects as well in the months and years ahead. So thank you guys again.
Cool. Thanks, Dave.
Take care. Thanks.
Cool. Thank you.